Hi, it's Miss Vitale. Cole, Diamond, and I just came back from a 4.5 mile walk. This is Diamond. See? Say hi. Yeah, she's my sweet girl. And this is Cole. Come here, Cole. Come here, buddy. Not you, Diamond. This is Cole. He's just trying to get petted. Come here, Diamond, stop. This is Cole. Say hi, Cole. That's Diamond. She doesn't leave him alone. But we're very tired from our long walk, and our respiratory systems we're working overtime. So this is going to begin the gas exchange section of our circulatory and gas exchange unit. Respiration is synonymous with gas exchange. Respiration is the uptake of oxygen from the environment and the discharge of CO2 to the environment. It is necessary to support ATP production in cellular respiration. It involves respiratory and circulatory systems. The respiratory medium is the source of oxygen. It's air in terrestrial animals and water in aquatic animals. Air is about 21% oxygen. It is the main reservoir of oxygen. Bodies of water contain oxygen in dissolved form, much less than in the air. The respiratory surface is the part of an animal where gases are exchanged with the environment. Movement of gases between the respiratory surface and the environment is entirely by diffusion. The respiratory surface tends to be thin and have a large surface area. All cells must be bathed in water to maintain the cell membrane. Therefore, all respiratory surfaces are moist and gases diffuse after being dissolved in water. Gas exchange occurs over the entire surface of protists and unicellular organisms. In simple animals, like sponges, cnidarians, and flatworms, the plasma membrane of every cell is close enough to the outside so that gases diffuse in and out. In larger animals, thin, moist epithelium separate the respiratory medium from capillaries which transport gases throughout the body. Earthworms use their skin as a respiratory medium and exchange gases through the entire body surface to underlying capillaries. Earthworms and amphibians are skin breathers, and they must stay moist to breathe. Gills are outfoldings of the body surface suspended in water. Oxygen concentrations in water are low. Warmer and saltier water hold less dissolved oxygen. Therefore, gills must be very efficient. Ventilation is the increased flow of respiratory medium over respiratory surface. Crayfish and lobsters have paddle-like appendages that force water over the gills. In fish, water enters the mouth and passes through slits in the pharynx, then over the gills and out of the body. In the capillaries of gills, blood flows in opposite directions of water. A countercurrent exchange is the opposite flow of blood and water, causing oxygen to be transferred to the blood very efficiently. Along the capillaries, a diffusion gradient favors the transfer of oxygen to blood. Gills can remove 80% of dissolved oxygen from water. The advantages of tracheal systems and lungs. Air has a higher concentration of oxygen. Oxygen and CO2 diffuse faster in air than in water. Respiratory surfaces in air don't have to be ventilated as thoroughly as gills. Less energy is needed because air is lighter and easier to pump than water, and less volume is needed to get equal amounts of oxygen. In tracheal systems, which are found in insects and are also considered an open respiratory system, as you can see from the diagram, the tracheal system is made of air tubes branching through the body. The trachea are the largest tubes that open to the outside of the body. The smallest tubes extend to almost every cell. Moist epithelium lines the terminal ends of the tubes where gas exchange occurs. Flying insects use 10 to 200 times more oxygen than non-flying. The body expands and contracts to compress and expands the air tubes with the flight muscles. Lungs, unlike tracheal systems, are restricted to one area. Spiders, terrestrial snails, and vertebrates all have lungs. The circulatory system carries gases through the body. Amphibians have small lungs and rely on skin breathing. Lungfish use lungs in oxygen-poor water or when spending part of their time exposed to the air. Mammal lungs are located in the thoracic cavity. They are spongy and honeycombed. They are made of moist epithelium, which is the respiratory surface. Air enters the nostrils. It is filtered by hair, warmed and humidified, sampled for odors. Then it enters the nasal cavity. Then it moves on to the pharynx. Again, the pharynx is where the food and air intersect. It then moves into the larynx, which is the voice box. The larynx is reinforced with cartilage. It's at the top of the trachea. It contains a pair of vocal cords. Vocal cords are voluntary muscles that stretch. The cords vibrate, and when they tighten, pitch is increased. When they loosen, pitch is decreased. The trachea is your windpipe. It has C-shaped rings of cartilage to maintain its shape and prevent it from collapsing. Bronchi are two branches of the trachea. One goes to each lung. Bronchioles are small branches of bronchi in the lungs. All of these branches are covered with cilia and mucus. The mucus traps the debris, and the cilia moves the mucus to the pharynx, where it is swallowed into the esophagus. The alveoli are clusters of air sacs at the ends of the bronchioles. They have thin epithelial tissue where gas exchange occurs. They create a total surface area of 100 square meters in humans. That's equivalent to a tennis court. Capillaries surround each alveolus where gas exchange occurs between the lungs and the blood. Breathing is the process that ventilates lungs. It is the alternation of inhaling and exhaling. Positive pressure breathing, like in frogs, occurs when muscles lower the floor of the oral cavity. The oral cavity then enlarges and draws air through the nostrils. The mouth and nostrils close and the floor of the oral cavity rises. That forces air down the trachea. Elastic recoil of the lungs and compression of the body wall force air out of the lungs. Negative pressure breathing in mammals works like a suction pump. It pulls air into the lungs instead of pushing. The lungs are enclosed by double-walled sacs. The inner layer adheres to the outside of the lungs, and the outer layer adheres to the inside of the chest wall. Thin, fluid-filled spaces separate the two. Because there is fluid between the two layers, they cannot be separated. They can slide against each other, but they can't be pulled apart. That surface tension prevents the two from being pulled apart, and it really acts like two panes of glass with water between them. But the two layers, as I said, slide smoothly past each other. The rib cage and the diaphragm contract. When the diaphragm contracts, it moves down. And when the rib cage contracts, it pulls the ribs up and the sternum out. This all causes the expansion of the chest cavity. And because the lungs are attached to the membrane that surrounds them, it pulls out the lungs and expands them. Air pressure in the alveoli becomes lower than atmospheric pressure. Because gas flows from a region of high pressure to low pressure, air rushes through the nostrils and down the breathing tubes to the alveoli. During exhalation, the rib muscles and diaphragm relax. Lung volume decreases, and an increase in air pressure in the alveoli forces air up and out of the nostrils.